All right, Entree Architect community, it's 4 p.m. Eastern, which means it's time for the Entree Architect Context and Clarity live conversation for Thursday, September 29th, 2022. Welcome. Glad you're here. As you get here, say hi. Let us know that you're here. Let us know where here is for you. Where are you joining this conversation from? If we've never met before, my name is Jeff. I'm in Indianapolis. I'm joined by Katharine, who's in Massachusetts. And we come here for this conversation every Thursday afternoon with a special guest. We do this because we're trying to find the clarity around the things that matter most to you, the architect. It doesn't matter if you're the employee of a firm or you own your own firm. Maybe you circle a date on the calendar. You said 2022 is my year and you're on the runway to starting your own thing. Or maybe you have owned your own firm for a year or 6 years or 23 years. You're starting to rethink or reimagine what that firm could or maybe even should be. All of the topics that we cover, one topic every day, they all fall under the broad umbrella of the business of architecture, and they're all the need-to-know topics for the success of entrepreneur architects just like you. So thanks for joining us today. Great to have you here. As I'm looking, it's weird. The comments scroll one way on one side and the other way on the other side. As I scroll in the right direction, I see that Scott Thrift was the first in the room today. He's over on LinkedIn. He says, "Happy Thursday from the city by the bay." Welcome back from San Francisco, Scott. You're the first in the room, which means that you are the winner of today's John Kinney Memorial Crocheted Bathtub Award. Congratulations. Glad you're here. John Jones, welcome back from Connecticut. And Facebook, glad you're here. Urban Collab that's the I think that's our official fan club over on Twitch. He says, "What's up, Evan?" And Chris Novelli, welcome back from Massachusetts. Let's see, Jessica, thanks for joining us from Los Angeles. Almost Friday, yes, almost Friday. I said Urban Collab. I should say Kurt. Kurt says that he's missed all week and he feels less than Entree. That's okay. That's all right. You came for the best conversation of the week. Glad that you're here, Kurt, and thanks for heading up the fan club over on Twitch. Jessica from Los Angeles. It's almost Friday. It's really almost Friday. If Audrey joins us today from Australia, then we can officially call it Friday because it will be. Mark LePage, welcome back from the road. Glad you're here. John says, check Architects and Allies. I was first there before it came on to Entree Architect. I don't, maybe we should have awards per platform, but we don't. So, but thanks for being the first in from the Architects and Allies Facebook group. Bob, welcome from Rockland, California. Milo, probably
Milo.
butchered that. Milo.
Oh no. I don't know.
I'm gonna say Milo. Let me know in the comments how to pronounce your name, and apologies in advance because I'm sure I butchered that. Glad you're joining us today. Chad, welcome back.
I think you got it right.
ATL. You think so?
I think so.
Hopefully. We'll see. Let's see. Chad says he just got his new assignment. Mecklenburg. Okay. Omar, he says, happy September 29th from Miami. Wow. Okay, Omar. Hope everything's okay down there where you are in Miami, and everybody else, all of our community that's down in South and especially Southwest Florida. Hang in there. Hope everything's okay for you. I know there's a lot of devastation down there. Kurt says, yeah, it's spoiler alert. It's Kurt. Spoiler alert, Kurt. That's his new name. I won't be able to say it, but
it doesn't really roll off the tongue.
It does not. If you are commenting away, if you're over on Facebook in a Facebook group commenting away and you're going, hey, my comments are not showing up on the screen right now, it's because you're in a private Facebook group, and Facebook has these privacy policies that say that your name, your likeness, your comment cannot leave that private Facebook group unless you give Facebook permission to talk to Restream, which is this platform that we use here. So in order to solve that problem, there is a URL now at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. Open up a new tab, and in the browser window, type chat.restream.io/FB, like Facebook. And a couple of clicks later, you can give Facebook permission to let your comments out, and we'll see them up on the screen just like we do Chad's. Jing is joining us, Jing Johnson from Houston, Texas. She says, happy Thursday. Facebook comment is not working for me, so I switch here. Well, I should have read your comment before I gave those instructions because it would have been a great segue. But Jing, I'm glad you found us on LinkedIn. You can use whichever platform you want. If you're not familiar, right now we're streaming to the Entree Architect YouTube or the Entree Architect Facebook group, the Architects and Allies Facebook group, the Entree Architect YouTube channel, Twitch stream, and then my LinkedIn profile and my Twitter feed. And I think I covered them all, but we're all over. We're trying to break the internet. That's what we're trying to do here today, streaming out to all the places. And we're glad that you're here with us. Like I said, we do this every Thursday. We've got a great guest lined up. It's actually one of the very few return guests that we've had for Context and Clarity Live. So this is going to be a good conversation today. This person, our guest today, they're enjoying the lunch that we provided in the green room right now. They will not be unfamiliar to you. And I think they're just the right person for where we are at this point in 2022 and this part of the year, this part of the Context and Clarity Live year. So, Katharine, before we go on, what have I forgotten? What do we need to talk about?
I thought you were going to remember that you forgot to say hi to me. Then you did almost just in time.
I said Katharine from Massachusetts, but I did not say hi. I did not say hi.
You didn't say hi. Yeah, it's okay. You said hi earlier.
Hi, Katharine. Do you have new lighting?
Hi, Jeff. Yeah, I do. Thank you for noticing. Yeah. Thank you for noticing. You know what? I was just thinking about how, you say 2022's your year. Yeah. Maybe you marked that. Or you also said 2021's your year and 2020 is your year. And then pretty soon you're going to say 2023 is your year. We just keep going with this thing.
Yeah, we'll run a contest.
Which year was the year?
Which year was the year, and how long will it take me to remember 2023? Is it going to be in January, or is it going to be in February, or is it going to be in...
I think you'll remember right away. I just wonder, sometimes you don't know it was the year until you go past it for some.
Yeah.
So I'm just interested.
I think, that's a good point. 2022 was my year, 21 or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Anyway.
Excellent.
That's all I have to say.
All right. Chucktown Sean says they're battening down the hatches in windy Chucktown. Be safe. Definitely prepare. I was talking to Katharine before we went live. The place that we have vacationed for nearly a decade at this point is essentially wiped off the map and not accessible from the mainland. Right now. It destroyed part of the causeway to get there. So this is a wicked storm. So be safe out there. And Wendy Brown, welcome back from Western Massachusetts. Glad you're here with us today as well. And anybody else, as you come in, say hi. Even if you're just listening in, if you're just planning to listen along, that's fine. Or if you're multitasking right now, that's fine. At least say hi. Let us know that you're here for the conversation, and we'll try to acknowledge you. And we're going to introduce our guest and get into this conversation here because it's, like I said, it's going to be a good one. So our guest today is an architect, an author, a host, and I'd say a futurist, a technologist, definitely. He's gone from working in the profession of architecture to working on the profession. We're going to talk about that today. He's the host of the podcast Troxel, which is TRXL, a co-host of the podcast Archispeak, and the architectural community director at TECT, or the TECT app. Evan Troxel, welcome back to Context and Clarity Live.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be a boomerang.
It's great to have boomerangs.
Boomerang. Okay.
It's, when you and I were communicating sort of leading up to today, we talked about the fact that over the course of this year, especially in the early parts of this year, we focused pretty heavily on some technology and some high tech, whether it's tools or realities or whatever. We talked about the metaverse, and we talked about metaverse related things like crypto and NFTs, and of course AI and generative design tools and things like that. When I reached out to you and I said, hey, we need we need to wrap up these conversations about tech, because I know that we had a great conversation with Matias Del Campo last week about ethics and AI. But after every one of these conversations, there's still the question. It's like, okay, AI, generative design, whatever. What does this have to do with me? What does this have to do with my practice? That's not like a Gensler size or some 3-letter acronym firm size firm. What really matters in terms of technology for the entrepreneur architect? And I think also, as we've touched on a little bit as well, as we look at the profession as a whole, what matters when it comes to the tools that we have available, and I think displaying and arguing for the value of the architect. I think that has to be part of the conversation as well. But to wrap it back around, I think this is the perfect time to talk about what really matters in tech for architects, and especially smaller or entrepreneur architects.
Yeah, and I just to build a little bit of even more context around that, I've been on a little bit of a speaking circuit, and I was in Kansas a couple of weeks ago at the AIA's annual meeting there, AIA Kansas, and it was first time they'd been back together in a few years, right?
Yep.
And they had just celebrated their 100th year as an organization. So their question was, what's the next 100 years going to look like? And they had invited me to I said, what's the next 5 years look like? Can we even think beyond the typical timeline of a project, right? I don't necessarily think that architects do step back to look at the longer picture profession-wide, let alone their business, right? It's kind of like heads down, crank on the latest project, make sure there's another one or two or three in the pipeline. And that is what drives us every day. And so obviously there's a lot of technology and stuff out there that can help. But just like no one asked you what school you went to when you go to work for a firm, or they don't ask you what tools you necessarily use either, So I think and we see this all throughout, especially small and mid-sized firms, like to each their own, right? And because there is no kind of organization level profession wide that's really helping. Obviously, Entree Architect is helping in that way on some level. The AIA helps at some level on that. But for the most part, it's kind of the Wild West. And even in firms, large firms, I would say, that's where a lot of my experience is coming from. It's the Wild West between project teams. And then I spoke at an AIA large firm roundtable group in San Diego. And this group was made up of CFOs, so chief financial officers for the large firms in the US, right? And large firms are a small percentage of firms. It's something like 5.6% or something like that of all firms in the US. And that means 50 or more people. But they are responsible for the most revenue that generated from our industry. So it was interesting as a counterpoint to giving a talk, a presentation to a group of architects. There was no firm size associated to that. It was, Kansas firms. And then to speak to large firms, but to speak to CFOs in large firms who have a very different day-to-day than an architect, right? They were way more into it than the architects were. Way more engaged. And so to your point, there's a lot of stuff going on, right, in the world of technology, in the world of architecture, in the world of construction technology, prop tech. There's all these kind of different silos or pieces to the building industry puzzle when it comes to technology. And at some level, it's totally overwhelming, right? It's just digital overload, digital fatigue is probably a better way to say it. It's like, really, another app, and then here I am, I work at a tech company. But our focus, and I think the thing that when it's like, what can people use today? Like, how can we boil this down to the most potent, useful thing right now? It's really about the people and the wisdom that is in those people, the experience. And that's my goal at TECT, is to unlock that between design professionals like architects and interior designers and landscape architects and engineers and the people who make every single thing that goes into our buildings. They both have an incredible amount of wisdom, and we architects kind of avoid them as much as possible, unless we know a few good ones, right? So,
and you're talking product reps, right?
Product reps, right? Because there's a lot of baggage there. There's a lot of bad experiences there, for sure. Not denying that at all.
Well, there's oatmeal raisin cookies.
There's croissants sometimes, and there's free lunches. But the dilemma for both sides is very real. There's a very different dilemma for each one. How do we find what we're looking for when we need it, no matter what phase of design we're in? I don't care what tool I'm using, right? It doesn't matter if I'm sketching or if I'm in BIM or if I'm using I need information to make my thing a reality.
Mm-hmm.
On their side, how do they engage with us in a productive way that leads eventually to a possible sale, right? Because that's what they do. They make stuff that our buildings are made out of. So that's really where I'm kind of settling in, and I'm sure I'm off topic from your original question at this point, but to me, if we boil it down, like, there is tech. Tech is not the reason why we do what we do. It's not why we're architects. It's not why we do architecture. It's a tool to get the job done. It's a means to the end. But the way in which we do it is also broken in that we are trained in school and through licensure to go it alone. So if you're a small firm, you definitely feel that, right? You still do that for the most part. Groups like these help ease the friction. But in large firms, even there, like, we're still kind of going about it alone, trying to find this information that we need, often finding dead ends, weird tangents, and it's like I say, you end up shopping for shoes a lot of times when you're just out there looking for information. So I don't know, maybe that's a good place to kick it back to you and just see what your thoughts and feelings are for both of you, and see where we go from here.
One thing I'm curious about, and I want to dig a little bit deeper into TECT here in just a minute, but going back to the two presentations that you were talking about, you said that the CFOs were a lot more into it than the architects were or are. Why do you think that is?
So I think it's simple. They are working more on the business than in the business, right? They're not project based. Of course, they're working on projects, but they're more overhead, right? So they're touching lots of projects. They hear a lot of pain points from different groups about tracking time and budgets and project management and all of these things. And so they're looking for better ways for the architects, who are the engine for their machine, to do things. But the architects can't get out of their own way to do that. So they're looking at it as an opportunity to go back to the architects. I mean, look what I just learned. Did you know about this stuff? And I think a lot of times the architects are going to probably know some of the things, at least, that I brought up, but there's not time to take it all in, right? This isn't the Matrix. You can't just plug me in and all of a sudden I know AI or I know Kung Fu, right? It just doesn't work like that. So I think that they're looking at it like, I could help add value back to the business by bringing these things to light within the company, and then also help break down the barriers between these very different departments, right? Design and architecture and financial stuff and contracts and business operations. And these are people who sit at the leadership tables in very serious strategy meetings, right? As CFOs. So for them to kind of take an interest in what is going on architecturally is awesome, right? And then architects, back to the Kansas one, I think it's just like, this is kind of scary. This is kind of overwhelming. Oh, I already do some of that. I can't do it all, which I totally get. And so I think that's kind of where I see a bit of a difference in the reaction or the response to the content that I was presenting.
That's interesting, because last week, I think we wrapped up last week in our daily context and clarity conversations with the question. We talked, like I said earlier, we talked to Matthias Del Campo last week about AI. And so we talked about different ways that tech is used in the profession. And I think it was Friday where the question was, should tech be for form or for function? And what you were just talking about really speaks to me in terms of those questions, because that's one of the things I wonder about. If as we try to make progress, as we try to push the profession forward, there's lots of shiny objects out there. You know that a lot better than I do. But we could have this AI generating. I had Neil Leach. I don't know if you're familiar with Neil Leach, but he's spoken to my my pro practice class before, and he demonstrates. I think it's part of the machine hallucination program, but they've got this AI that is only fed. It's visual data from Zaha Hadid projects,
right?
And so then it goes through this generation of different designs, and you look at every single one of those designs and you go, yeah, that's Zaha, that's Zaha, that's Zaha, and none of them are Zaha. It's all coming out of this AI.
The language of Zaha, yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So there, there's those really flashy, shiny things. Go, oh my gosh, I could put some data in here somehow. This thing could design something for me. But on the other side, I think in terms of the profession, this is my own personal feeling. I think in terms of the profession, pushing it forward and demonstrating value, to me, is closer to something like we talked to Clifton Harness a couple of weeks ago, who I know you know. If we can make the developer, in that particular project type that
right.
TestFit is focused on, if we can make the life and business of the developer better, easier, whatever, that's demonstrating a value. I think that pushes the profession forward a lot more than dreaming in AI or however they have more poetic ways of talking about it. But so what is it? It is probably both, but what's going to be in the next 5 years, as you said, what's going to be more beneficial to the profession? Tech for form or tech for function?
Okay, yeah. So yeah, it's both, of course, Jeff. It's always more. Everybody needs to always do more. Tech for function is the place it needs to be applied so that we can spend our times doing more meaningful things.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to form, when it comes to inspiration, which I think that's where people are kind of freaking out over what's going on with the AI stable diffusion kind of stuff, is because it can visualize something with text as input in a way better way than I could do without it, right? Way better than I could do myself, because I'm not trained to do that kind of stuff, right? I can definitely sketch on some trace, I can convey ideas, I can talk people through things, but if somebody wants an image that evokes a mood in a place, like AI kicks my butt, right? So that's more form. And then there's stuff like Clifton is doing with TestFit, which is way more function, right? It's tied to numbers. It's got some code, like building code stuff tied into it as well. You can visualize in a plan, but it speaks a developer's language, which is money, right? Feasibility on a site. So I saw an interesting quote on LinkedIn by a guest that I've had on my podcast, Theodoros Galanos. And he said, automation is not the future of architecture. AI is, right? And what he means by that is like, well, yeah, of course, keep automating the mundane. That is totally, so to your question, that's what tech should be focused on, I believe. Like I shouldn't be spending my time drafting. My value is not to compete against somebody in drafting. That's not where my value as an architect lies. But the idea of what AI can augment a skilled person to bring more to the table faster, that is extremely inspirational. You look at those images that Neil Leach has come up with, it's like awe-inspiring. Of course, it's just 2D. Of course, but it speaks 1,000 words, and it is basically text prompt engineering. If an architect got good at that, you would blow away somebody who is not an architect who can do that, right? So I think while it is democratizing access to creation tools for anyone, it doesn't care who you are. If you're an architect who is willing to learn how to use that stuff, you can just get so much better, so much faster in the eyes of people who want to look at stuff, because that's the language they speak, right? So a developer speaks functional, they speak pro forma, they speak feasibility, they speak dollars. Potential client for residents is like, what's it going to look like? How am I going to live? What's it going to feel like, right? Like those are the language that they speak, and that's the media that they interact with. So that's a better communication tool depending on who you're talking to.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, the architect has to speak a lot of languages. You've got to pull all of these things in. You've got to coordinate all of these things in, which I think is maybe a good way to bring this back to talking about what TECT is, or what the TECT app is. And you talked about it a little bit a few minutes ago, but what is it that you're actually doing? What's the goal? What's the purpose?
Yeah.
And then why are you doing it?
So I'll just preamble. If you want to hear my colleague talk about it in depth on the Entree Architect podcast, that episode was pretty recent. So you can hear more about it if this is at all interesting to you. I think it is interesting. It should be interesting to every architect who specifies any product on any project, and which is basically every project, right? So the idea is that our goal is to connect people to people. And why? Because I can get more out of a 20-minute conversation from a person who has experience and wisdom in a product category that I don't know very much about as an architect. And you might think you know a lot about curtain wall or doors or door hardware. I guarantee you they know a lot more, right? And the reason they know a lot more is because they're keeping an eye on what's happening with the code, what's happening with energy requirements. Like they do that in their category specifically. So they do know more than we do. And in that 20 minutes, I can get way more than if I go on to what everybody does. We go on to Google. We either do two things. We do one of two things. We either use the thing we've always used, right? That's I already spent the time. I already have a spec. I already have the detail. But there's always stuff on a project that is new and different to us, right? It might not be new in the world. It might just be new to us, right? So if I'm going to go look for that, how do I find it? How do I even know where to look? What are the right questions to ask about this product category? What can you tell me if I'm in DD that's going to be different than if I'm in, I don't know, feasibility? And I just want to see if this is even an option in my region to do this, right? So those are two very different conversations. Our goal is to connect a design professional directly with an expert, and it can be regionally or locally based as well. So that's typically kind of an opaque part to design professionals. If I wanted to specify windows in Southern California, it's probably a different conversation than if I was doing something in Florida, right? Regions matter for some products most of the time. And even then, if it's the same product, there are differences in manufacturing, there's differences in logistics, sometimes there's differences in the materials they're made out of, depending on where it's made. So we don't know any of that stuff as architects, right? And so our goal is to get you to answers faster. How we do that? We just match you up with a real person. So that's why we think this is so powerful, is because we can do this right now. There are people who need information, architects, landscape architects. They need information now, today, on their projects. There are building product experts right now. They're already there. Our goal is to kind of mediate the connection and make sure that everyone, the product reps are playing by the right rules, which are, don't sell to me. I'm not buying your stuff, okay? Mm-hmm. Don't put me on your email list. I don't want to fill out a form and give you my information. Don't cold call me because the timing's never right. I need what I need when I need it, and there's 300 products on this project, not one, not just you. So those are kind of the basic ground rules that we set up. We actually even built an academy to help product reps understand what architects need in a much more thorough and better way than they've had access to before, because we're architects. We know what we need. We've talked to thousands of architects. We know what they've asked for. We built that into an academy to train them how to do that. So is it a tech solution? It is in the way that we connect people, but it's really about connecting experts to experts and getting the information at a higher level than just information. Like you don't go onto tech to look for a detail or a cut sheet, or you go on there to find a person to get you whatever you need, because chances are if you're finding it on their website, it's already out of date anyway.
Yeah, this is true. As you were talking, you mentioned Bob was on the Entree Architect podcast, and by the way, Bob, at least early on, was in the comments here. So hi, Bob.
He's just checking on me. That's all.
Yeah, he's making sure. It was episode 469. So the Entree Architect podcast is anywhere you consume podcasts. Episode 469. Bob Habian. Hopefully I pronounced that right.
Yeah.
The title is A People Platform Promoting Positive Change for the Profession. It's a whole lot of alliteration there.
It is enunciated. Yeah, alliterated.
Did you do that on purpose?
Probably.
Yeah. Tongue twister. There's Bob.
I like tongue twisters.
And Bob and Evan and others had a nice presence at the AA National Conference on Architecture in Chicago this year. So it was great to hang out with you guys there as well. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm just wondering if this is something that's already available, because I thought it wasn't available yet.
Yeah. So what we're doing, this is a typical technology chicken and egg problem. This is a platform that is free for architects, anybody on the design side, because we shouldn't have to pay for access to this information, whatever it is. Because again, it just needs to get into the project so that it can get built, right? And so this is something that just to be totally upfront about it. There's Bob's eyeballs. The building product manufacturers are the ones who pay to be on this platform and make it possible. But in order to get them to show up, we need to show that architects actually want this to be better, that we are sick and tired of the way that it is, that we are tired of putting up with this kind of status quo broken system of trying to find information in a world with more and more noise, right? So my ask at this point, Katharine, is to get people to show support by going to TECT.com/join and just adding their name. That's all it is a vote, basically. Your information goes nowhere except to me, just so I know that people actually are interested in making a better way. Because the alternative is to either keep going like we're going, which is difficult and painful, and it lacks that injection of wisdom early on in projects when it makes the biggest impact. Or you're going to go to a website and just get some information. And a lot of times, again, that's out of date. It's not contextual to the region. It doesn't have enough of the assembly information a lot of times. So the idea here is we're making the case to manufacturers to get on board. And we're doing this as a profession. So that's my ask at this point. Our goal, our date for launch is at the AIA conference in San Francisco in June of 23. So until that point, we are signing up manufacturers. We actually have a bunch of manufacturers who are signing up, who are early adopters, and they don't care how many architects are interested in this yet. They know they need to change. Our other strategy, there's multiple strategies. We want to show the ones who are a little harder to convince that there is a mass of architects who want this to be better.
What was that URL again, Evan?
You got it. It's right there.
I put it on the screen.
TECT.com/join.
I'm way ahead of you there.
Yeah, I'm busy looking it up, and you've already got it on the screen. Excellent.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just a thing that works on your computer or works on your phone. One of the beauties of this that building product reps don't get this. So this is just between us architects here, right? Which is like, I'll start off and say it this way. AIA has done research for the last 6 years that says 2 out of 3 architects walk away from a manufacturer's website that asks for their information to get something.
Yeah.
Some manufacturers get that, most don't. So we give architects the ability to talk to manufacturers in stealth mode. So kick the tires. A lot of projects, maybe not in the single family residence realm, but maybe it depends on who your client is, right? Don't want you talking about their project to somebody else. They don't want anyone to know they're doing it and they're under NDA or whatever. We give you the ability to talk about a project with an expert without them knowing who you are. They're uneasy about that, but what they don't realize is that's what architects actually want, because I don't even know if this is the right direction. I definitely don't want to be on your mailing list if I don't even know this is the right direction, right? So we give you the ability to start in what we call stealth mode. And at any point on your terms, you get to flip the switch and be public with them about who you actually are. And that is the start of a relationship. That's a really great thing. And that's our goal, is to build relationships, because they're getting you what you need, and you build up the comfort to say, you know what, cool. I'm actually okay with you knowing who I am, and maybe even what the project is at this point. And you get to decide when that happens on your terms.
Okay.
That's an interesting, sort of combination of dynamics. I hadn't thought about that. And I've not thought about this in terms of like a professional practice class where we talk about ethics. But when someone's trying to sell you a product, right? When a product rep is saying, hey, yada, 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 and your main goal needs to be, wrapped around some fiduciary responsibility, sustainability, service, and everything to your client.
Yes.
I had not made that connection before, really, that you're at odds.
Mm-hmm.
If it's about selling, X number of board feet of hardy plank, or do they call it that if it's fiber cement? I don't know, but
it's true, because I think a lot of times, I'm going to look in as a rep, I might look and see what your domain name is from your email address to know how big the firm is that you're coming from. Like if it says SOM, that's different than my tiny little architecture firm. And so who am I going to target as a lead? The big one, right?
Yeah.
And so it actually levels the playing field for design professionals to get the help that they need, no matter who they are. That's
a good
fantastic.
point.
It does the same thing for building product reps, though, on our platform. We all have like the usual suspects when it comes to Windows and CMU and like Hardy, like you just mentioned, right? Like there's these big players, but what about all the ones who are millions of dollars in on their business and can't connect with architects?
Mm-hmm.
We don't allow them to pay for placement. There's no way to rank them over you if you provide, as the supplier, the product in a certain area. Like this is also awesome for architects, because I'm going to find stuff that I had no idea existed, because this is just for the building industry, right? It's not Google, right? So if you type in CMU block on Google, you're going to get like 1 billion search results, right? If you type it into this, you're going to get like 3 of whom are in your area, that kind of a thing. So it just gets you so quickly to what you need as quickly as possible.
This really speaks back to what we were talking about this morning on Clubhouse. And if you're new around here to Context and Clarity, every morning at 9 a.m. Eastern, we start these conversations on the Clubhouse app, and then we have what we call Context and Clarity conversation in the afternoon. Most days it's inside the Entree Architect community or every day it's inside the Entree Architect community Facebook group. But on these days, on Context and Clarity live days, we simulcast out to all those places I mentioned before. But this morning on Clubhouse, somebody brought up, it was actually, I'm going to mention her, I'm going to call her out, even though I haven't seen her pop up in the conversation yet. But Amy Baker, who's in Michigan, she specializes in spec writing. She was talking about spec writing software, mm-hmm. and the fact that whatever, I don't know if she even mentioned a specific software, but it was one of the big ones, right? It was one of the major players in the market. That as she was talking to them and asking them about, well, what about smaller firms that do their specs on their sheets rather than a 3-part in a book and so on and so forth, and the fact that that particular company, I guess, didn't even realize that was a thing. In my initial reaction to that, it was very selfish, because the way that I teach pro practice at the MARC level is basically like a startup incubator, and they pitch their idea to Shark Tank at the end. And so we focus on, what's the problem that we're solving? Who wants to have this problem solved? Who's willing to pay to have that problem solved? What do we know about that problem? All the iterations to build this along the way to build this business plan that can then be pitched.
Yeah.
And my initial response was, well, they wouldn't pass my class because they didn't realize that this was out there. But Amy pointed out, hey, they made a great product for a certain type of client, a certain type of customer might be what they call them instead of clients. And then when she brought this up, they very quickly iterated and came up with a solution to the other. And so then, well, okay, I've got to take that back. I might actually give them an A now, because they've done the research and they've responded. And to me, I think that's part of what you're talking about here too. Is there are a lot of people out there serving the AEC world, serving architects, that don't know the entire landscape. They don't understand the whole ecosystem exactly like what you're talking about. Hey, I'm gonna do a lunch and learn. I'm gonna bring the box lunches. I'm gonna make sure that half of them have chocolate chip cookies and half of them have the most evil cookie on the planet in them, and then we're just gonna sell you. We're going to sell you this product, whether it's something that you really need or it's the best product or not. Is that the future of, going back to working on the profession? Is that what we need to push for in terms of the future, where we do a better job, architects do a better job of educating those that are providing for us?
That's exactly our tact here, which is like, there is a communication gap. There is an understanding gap about what each side needs. We need to learn more about what manufacturers can do, will do, won't do, all of that. They need to know the same about us, right? And so we took it on ourselves to educate the manufacturing side of what architects actually need on behalf of the profession, because they're not changing the way they're doing things. It's obvious, and because of that, the gap is getting bigger, right? Mostly, it seems like product manufacturers are in this. I'm not speaking for all of them, but a lot of them focus on the end of the timeline for architectural timeline, right? Like substitutions, selling directly to contractors and subcontractors, right? Because that's where the widgets get sold. So it makes a lot of sense. But they don't realize, a lot of them don't realize, again, there are a lot of asterisks in these statements, but it's like, by getting to the table early, if you're invited to the table early to provide your expertise, then, man, those decisions, they make such a bigger impact all the way through to the end that you would never have to even go to the end to try to get your product put in then. It's like, the earlier you are, the way higher the chances that it's actually going to happen. So how did we do that? We're going to teach them what architects actually need, right? We're going to tell them what we want out of the process. Do we need to do that a lot more? Do we need to do that with our software vendors, like the spec example that you just said? Yeah, we do, all the time, right? Are they always going to listen? No, but I wrote this down. I have a regular paper notebook here too, and because I'm still have some old school architect in me, right? And context and clarity. My question for this audience right here is, like, in this realm, what do you really want? We've talked to thousands of architects. I want to know what this audience wants in a system like this, because I want to hear it and I want to build it for you. Like that is exactly where we want to go. And that feedback gets to the manufacturers, because I think a lot of architects don't speak candidly to manufacturers. They're not like straight up to their face, like, look, you're screwing up here. I mean, some architects are, right? But we're not super candid with them. I can be totally candid with them because I'm not the architect that they're trying to get in touch with. And so by allowing me to spread that message to them on your behalf is huge for our profession, right? Because it actually does start to change their behavior.
I love that idea. And this is a great opportunity. The context and clarity is built on a conversation and engagement format here. So if you actually have some suggestion, some desire from product manufacturers, et cetera, like what Evan is talking about, feel free to drop it into the comments on any of the platforms that we're streaming to right now. And of course, you can reach out to Evan and the rest of the team over at TECT App. We'll give you some contact information here towards the end of the conversation. But I love where that's going. You said something at the beginning or towards the beginning when you were talking about large firms and being 5% of architects, but the majority of the revenue. And we actually talked about that in my class Tuesday night. There's this strange dynamic where the vast majority of architects are small firms, if we can boil it down that way, but not the majority of the revenue, which is the flip side of what you said earlier. But man, the opportunities here. I keep waiting for the day when someone's going to say, hey, we want to build an X for, residential architects or, whatever. I think there's a lot of room for that type of development.
Yeah. And this is for it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what size firm you're in. Like everybody can outsource their time because we charge money for time as architects. It doesn't pretty much is the standard way about it, right? If you can have more time because they're doing the work for you, which they're happy to do, like they will do it, right? We set the ground rules, we set the expectations about how they provide service to you. And then, okay, I can outsource that to them. They can do that while I'm doing more important things, while I'm finding the next client, while I'm doing my design, whatever it is. So we feel like that's probably the biggest game changer. Doesn't matter what size firm you're in. Do you want more time to do the stuff that you love to do? This is a way to do it.
Yep, that's a great point.
So, Evan, I'm sure you're going to do something like this, but for someone like me, who I just do very particular type of projects, and so a lot of the, in those sorts of databases, a lot of the materials aren't relevant to me. So since it's going to be something like, I guess, on the computer where I could probably like do search type things, could I check off like I'm a residential architect in Massachusetts, and then I'd only see relevant materials?
Yeah, so that definitely is on the roadmap to be able to kind of break it down by project type for sure, and or even type of market or architect or whatever you want to look for, set as a filter for like what actually shows up. In the beginning, we're trying to just have broad coverage because what architects, AIA actually commissioned a research study on the TECT platform, and they showed it to architects and they said, we love everything about this. I want to do this, but if I show up the first day and I don't have enough results for what I'm looking for, I probably won't come back. So we're in that category right now of building the base of early adopter product manufacturers who want to be the first ones on the platform. And my guess is every architect who's listening to this today has 1, 2, 3, probably less than 5 product experts that they go to all the time. It doesn't matter what phase of the project, if it's a window and door expert, whatever it is, right? Thanks, Pamela. She says she joined. The idea is like, if we share a couple as every architect out there, I will give you hundreds back because of that, right? Because if we all add a little bit, man, that's a huge mass of product manufacturers who are being referred directly from architects, and that's exciting to them, right? To know that, and I don't need to keep this product expert who's my go-to door and window person to myself. Like, I don't use them enough. That shouldn't be something that I need to hang on to and not share that wealth. And it benefits them to get more clients as well because their service is so good. That's how we raise the bar, right? Across the profession. So I also, if you join in, I'll send you an email. This gives you the opportunity to share a couple of reps with me so that I can go directly to them and say, look, Pamela recommended you that we need to talk. Here's why. And then I get to have those conversations on architects' behalf. And it's a powerful statement to be able to do that. Because there are reps who already get it. They know the right way to do this. They are so helpful. They're not pushy. They're not trying to sell their stuff. Those are the ones we want on the platform in the beginning because we want to set the bar for what all of the reps should actually be like.
Omar has a couple of comments that I think are pretty good. He says, anyone that looks at the plans from GCs to subs can use a well-organized database of materials. I think that brings up a good question and I'm going to say just, but I don't mean to demean TECT in any way. Is TECT just going to be the conduit between the architect and the manufacturer, or are there going to be other branches to this tree as well?
I think that there's tons of potential, but that is where we're starting. So we have to prove the model. We're architects, so we're being a little selfish here, right? Like, this is where we're coming from. This is what we need. This is the tool we wish we had. And Bob has a ton of experience on the manufacturer side. He's worked for decades on product manufacturing, and he's a licensed architect as well. So that's kind of the sweet spot for us. But the owners, students, contractors, consultants, you could see where this can go because there's expertise and there's a thirst for knowledge from all of those. And so our goal is to be the people of the building industry. Like, this is where people come first. And so we want to build that network as strong as possible because we are all, fighting towards the same goal. I hesitate to say we're all on the same team because we're not always, but that would be awesome if we were. But we are going towards this one goal at the end to deliver this project. And there's a huge need to connect people throughout that whole process. So we're starting here. We're starting with design professionals, not just architects, and the building product manufacturers, but we see it being applicable to lots of other areas inside the building industry and even outside.
I think so. We talked with, like I said, we talked with Clifton Harness a few weeks ago, and unashamedly says, this is our niche, right? The multifamily projects, and I think that's so important. It doesn't negate the possibility of growth, but we need to have a focus to get this started. I realize we have just flown to the top of the hour here, so we've got to let Evan get back to his work today. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention that you will be one of the speakers at the EntreArchitect Community Annual Meeting that's coming up in just over a month, November 1st through 3rd in Austin, Texas. What are you going to be talking about in Austin?
Yeah, so I will be talking about, I forget the name of I think my title was The Two Things That Architects Hate. Another way to say it is disruptive technologies in architecture and you. Another way to say it is emerging technology in architecture. So I'm going to be showing a lot of the stuff that I think makes architects really uncomfortable. But there is a lot of opportunity there as well. And so I do plan on bringing it back to the people part of the equation and why that's so important and why that matters, because it's how we can start to address this stuff today. So I'm excited to have that conversation and to show off the deep dive that I've been doing for the last decade plus on the technology side of architecture, kind of watching what's happening. You guys have been having those conversations here as well. And that's what my Troxel podcast is all about. So excited to bring that as a, bring that stuff to the surface and then start to talk about how we can actually apply it starting now.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm glad you brought up the Troxel podcast, because if you are watching this right now, or maybe in the future, you're watching a replay of this, if this at all wets your whistle, if you are interested in technology in the AEC world, go to wherever it is that you consume podcasts and find the Troxel podcast, TRXL. I am always fascinated by your guests when I have the opportunity to listen to your episodes. Usually revolves around research for one of our upcoming guests, but you have great conversation with great guests. And so if you're into technology in this space, the Troxel podcast is something you're definitely going to be interested in. So again, go to wherever you consume podcasts and look for TRXL and the ArchiSpeak podcast. That's still trucking along. How many years have you and Cormac been doing
10 years.
ArchiSpeak now? 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years.
Amazing.
Wow.
And if I could plug one more, this last February, I started the Peopleverse podcast, and that is really having conversations like the one we had today that really addresses better ways of bridging this gap between what we call supply and demand, or building product manufacturers and the design professional side. So a lot of amazing conversations from all aspects. And the goal there is to show, man, there is great information no matter what side of the table you sit on. And by having these out loud, breaking down those barriers so that we start to trust the other side just a little bit more and start to build a relationship. And there's cool people out there. I want to know who they are, right? As an architect, I want to know who they are on that side and on my side. So we're just trying to build some bridges there.
Yeah, I love it. So there you go. You have 3 assignments: the Peopleverse podcast, the Troxel podcast, and the ArchiSpeak podcast.
Jeez, that's a lot, Evan. A lot of podcasts.
Sheesh is right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you got to have something to do with all of your free time. And if you want to know more about our upcoming conference in Austin, Texas, it's the first ever business conference just for entrepreneur architects. Go to smallfirmconference.com. You'll find all the information on our speakers, the venue, the schedule, all of those things. And you can also register there. Smallfirmconference.com is the URL for that. And speaking of that, and speaking of Evan being a speaker, our guest on Context and Clarity Live next week is another speaker for the Entre Architect Community Annual Meeting. Joyce Martyr will join us to talk about the connection between your mindset and your financial health, the financials of your business. So don't miss Context and Clarity Live next week as Dr. Joyce Martyr takes over the seat that Evan is sitting in right now. So
where'd you get that ticker, Jeff? I don't see that as an option.
It's the magic ticker.
You hit it. Your hidden ticker.
It's at the bottom of the screen.
I know, but it's nowhere over here. I'm saying
it is. Well, under captions.
We can argue about that later.
The bottom choice. Evan, as always, thank you. You bring a lot to these conversations and a lot of experience and expertise and creative thinking. So thank you for this. Thanks for helping us wrap up a year of talking about tech here on Context and Clarity. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to come back, and I hope that everybody does join and show these people that we mean business. We want things to be better at tech.com/join, and I thank you for continuing these conversations. It's absolutely vital to the health of this profession. So kudos to you two for doing that as well. I'll see you in Austin.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, if you missed it, there's the URL. Go to tech.com/join, like Pam did, like Katharine did, as even as we were having this conversation.
Yeah, I shouldn't have done it, but I had to. I felt like I had to. I was on the page, and so what can I do?
It always freaks me out. It's like, wait a minute, where's she sitting right there? She's commenting right there. Yeah. It's fun. The technology that we have.
Good times.
All right. With that, again, thanks, Evan. Thanks, Katharine, as always, for co-hosting this with me. To you out there listening and commenting here, whether you're live now or on a replay at some point, thank you. Because if it weren't for you, if it weren't for you making context and clarity a thing, we wouldn't be having these conversations every weekday afternoon. We wouldn't be talking with Evan Troxel here on Context and Clarity Live, simulcasting out and trying to break the internet by going to as many channels as we possibly can. So thank you for this opportunity. I say this every day. Again, this is a reminder as much for me as for you, and it's especially poignant right now with some of the storms and things that are going on. But please, be well, stay safe, keep those around you safe and well. Take a little bit of time to breathe, relax, find a way to rejuvenate. We do this every day. You got to pace yourselves. And thanks for going along this journey with us. We'll see you next time, everybody. Thanks.